Hello, everyone. We are so excited to be with you on this fourth episode of And the Beat Goes On. We are so excited to welcome today Dr. Tim Brent, who's going to be talking to us. So, welcome, Dr. Brent.
Hi, everybody.
As we get ready and jump in, we're also going to introduce ourselves here with this crew. Why don't we start with Bree?
Hi, my name is Briera, and I've been with the choir school for 3.5, almost 4 years now.
Awesome. And Nishan.
Hello, everyone. This is my third time being on this show, but I will give my introduction anyway. Hello, my name is Nishan Cologne. I've been at the choir school for 10 years, and it's been amazing.
Awesome. And Lex?
Hello, my name is Lex. I've been with the choir school for about 4 years now. I love the sense of community we've built, and I'm really glad we're still able to stay in touch with everyone and ourselves.
Great. And Miss Kira.
Hi, I'm Kira Marson. I'm the Director of Development and Advancement at the choir school, and I've been here about approximately 4 years also.
Awesome. And Miss Pasco.
Hi, I'm Brittany Pasco. I'm the Director of Education and Assistant Conductor at the choir school, and I've almost been a year in at the choir school.
Great. And my name is Ariana Harley Emerson. I'm the director here at the choir school. We are so excited to have this new web series, and we're pumped that Tim is with us today to talk about some of what he's doing, his compositional work and his teaching and all of that. So, Tim, first and foremost, can you tell us a bit about how are you doing during this whole pandemic?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we are doing great. So my wife and I have a young son. His name is Alex. He will be 14 months old in about 2 weeks. So he is keeping us very, very busy. For me, it's actually not much different than it was before the pandemic, because this year, my wife, Amanda Quist, became the Director of Choral Activities at the Frost School of Music at the University of Miami. So we relocated from Central New Jersey, where she was teaching at Westminster Choir College, and I was teaching at Rider University, to Miami, Florida. And I was a stay-at-home dad. So I got to stay home every day and take care of our son, Alex, while my wife went off to continue building a choral program at the University of Miami. So for me, having the pandemic hasn't really changed much about my daily life. I get to spend more time with my wife Amanda, which is amazing. But she's been as busy or busier since this pandemic has started, trying to shift everything to virtual and online teaching. So that has kept her quite busy. So my responsibilities still have been a stay-at-home dad, which is great. And so we've just been trying to take advantage of what is around us, trying to keep social distancing, and we want to make sure we get outside a little bit. So we've gone out on occasion for strolls and walks, but trying to make sure that we limit seeing anybody or trying to keep away from anybody so we don't risk anything.
Awesome. Awesome. And that's so great that you have this time to stay at home with Alex. That's amazing. It's
Great.
like the most like amazing time. And like to see kids develop during that first 2 years is like,
Oh,
it's like miraculous. It's like, how
it
does
is.
this even happen?
I
And how
know.
are you making music? Like what are you doing?
That's
How are you making music these days?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, going into this transition, coming down from New Jersey to Miami, I had lined up a number of commissioned choral commissions throughout the year, not realizing how difficult it was going to be to try to take care of a young child and write music at the same time, which, knock on wood, I was able to fulfill all of my writing obligations, but it was certainly not easy. I had limited amounts of time. My creative juices were pretty much spent at the end of the night after a day of taking care of a young child. So trying to create music when he went to bed was almost an impossibility. So I had to figure out ways to do it during the day. So some of that was during his nap time, and some of that we actually got babysitters to come over and watch him while I would sit and write.
Mm-hmm.
That was also very challenging because here in Miami we live in a 2-bedroom apartment, so there's not many places that he can go and hide. So he's literally in the living room, and I'm trying to to write 8 feet away. And sometimes he wants daddy, and that means that
Yeah.
I can write when he wants to play. So I figured it out one way or the other. We've got 7 commissions done.
Wow.
I don't know how. I look back and go, I don't know how we did this, but we did. And unfortunately, a number of them have yet to be executed because of the pandemic. So,
Oh man.
yeah.
Oh
So they're
man. Well,
there.
congrats.
Yeah, thank you. So hopefully, some of the people have reached out to me and said they might be virtual premieres. Some have said we're gonna, shift, and hopefully, in the fall, if everything goes according to plan, we can get back to music making. We can do them in the fall, and if that is not the case, then I think it might have to be, we'll just have to wait for a time that we can, make music.
Yeah, wow. That's gotta feel very, 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 very strange. So can you tell us about like how do you even start composing a piece, and what does that process look like?
Sure. Well, for me, now, of course, I think a lot of composers might approach things differently, but for me, I always like to understand what's the person that's asking me to write for them. What is it they envision? So I try to elicit a lot of information from the choral director. What are the pieces that inspire you? What particularly do you want this piece to do in your program? Do you want it to be something that's lively, rhythmic, up tempo? Do you want it to be slow and pretty and somber? What is it you're looking for kind of programmatically before I jump into the piece? Because the more information that I can collect from the choral director, that's going to inform everything that I do in terms of my writing. So once they kind of describe what it is the piece should be in terms of its style, then I ask a lot of input from them to give me composers, arrangers of choral music that they particularly enjoy, so that I can kind of dive into their headspace about what aesthetics they like from choral music, and wrap my head around that, so that when I go to approach the writing, that will also inform some of the things that I do. So, like for example, I just wrote a piece for a children's choir in Central Maryland, and I've never written for children's choir before. I've heard plenty of children's choirs, but I've never written for one. So the piece that I did before that was for a semi-professional group. That's a completely different approach. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not a completely different approach, but it's a much different approach in terms of the harmonic and rhythmic sophistication that would go into a semi-professional group composition versus a children's choir group. So understanding what compositionally makes a good children's choir piece, I had to do my homework. So I asked this director, I said, please give me, 10 pieces that have been very successful for your choir, that your students enjoyed, that you enjoyed, so that I can study compositionally what's gone into. So I almost do like a deconstructive kind of approach. And so I take the harmonic elements, the melodic elements, rhythmic elements, deconstruct them, and then figure out if there are similarities to some of the pieces that the director has sent me. This person particularly likes X. So if I can somehow weave that into my composition, chances are their students are going to react positively, and as is the director. So I feel like compositionally, I'm beholden to the person I'm writing for. I don't want to be the person that just says, here is my artwork, just accept it, I hope you like it. It's like, no, I want you to love this piece. I want your students to love this piece. I don't want it to just be kind of some of this ethereal art that, maybe just gets one premiere and then nobody likes it. So it just kind of lives in a file cabinet the rest of its life. That to me is, that's not the art that I want to make. So I want my art to move people. I want people to be inspired by it. So hopefully when I hand over a piece of music, the process is also collaborative along the way. So I would never compose a whole piece of music and then just turn it over and say, I hope you like this. Along the way, as we're moving, I'm going to give the person who's commissioning me, I'm going to give them phrases, I'm going to give them sections and say, please review this. Tell me what you think. I need your input. I value your input. Please let me know what you think. And so that we can have a dialogue about that process. So I guess I would describe my compositional process as also collaborative.
Awesome. And that is definitely very true for those who are watching. The choir school, we had the privilege of commissioning Tim to write a piece for us. One of the reasons why I'm so glad you were on is because we just our actual last performance was singing what you wrote for us
Wow.
at the ACDA Eastern Division Conference. And we had a whole year kind of built around your piece of music that you wrote for us called We Are the Music Makers. And our ACDA set was built around that. And I want to open up to our choristers here to kind of, we're going to talk about this piece and delve into it a bit. A lot of actually choral conductors are asking me like, what was that? Like, that was amazing. I loved it. And I was like, you know what, we should have a whole show about this. So we definitely want to make sure we talk about this piece and that experience. So why don't we start off with Lex? Can you talk to us a little bit about the piece and kind of like what were your reactions to the piece of music and kind of how it grew and evolved?
Personally, I loved this piece like a lot. Like every time Mr. Harley says we're going to be singing it, I get really excited. Especially, I think the little jazzy element in parts of the choir, despite it being a big choir piece, is what gets me hyped for it. I really love the word painting, and when we first started singing it, I already fell in love with it. And then the more we understood the piece, and the more we added painting, like with the a breath section, like doing the breath, like having pieces that made sense with the rest of the music made me love it even more. So I continue to fall in love with this piece. It's one of my favorites, I think. Um, and I enjoy every time we work on it. The semi-chorus is also very fun.
Yes, I love. We definitely love that semi-chorus a lot. Bree, what were your thoughts about the piece?
I unfortunately did not get to sing with the choir at ACDA, and but I also got a chance to work on it when we first pulled it out last year, I believe, for our gala. And we worked really hard, like Lex said, on the semi-chorus. That was one of my favorite parts. And definitely, um, the good part about not being able to sing with the choir for the ACDA was being able to hear it. And I thought that it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. And to hear such a big improvement since when we first sang it, which I thought it was even perfect back then, but hearing it now and hearing how we've been able to tweak it and add our own style and um, just hearing your wonderful work, it was just so amazing to hear. And I was just so proud and I was so happy that you were able to write this amazing piece of music that we were able to sing. And just, it was just really incredible. I love this piece so much.
And Nishan, what were your thoughts and reactions about singing Music Makers?
We Are the Music Makers. It's my first thoughts on it. I really liked it, honestly. Like I never like all of the like at all of the time that I've been at the choir school, I've never sung a song at that degree that really has the text override with the matching symphonies, the notes, the rhythm, just everything, and it just makes it so like it just makes it like hmm, how could I explain this? It really makes it blossom. It really makes it blossom.
I agree with that. And there are like just these like sections that just like the middle section I think is absolutely exquisite. And we'll listen to the piece. And I just always think of the Bruckner Os Justi
It's
and that
great.
middle section. And I think it's great. And it has this percussion part, which is just like a heartbeat. And I feel like that djembe is like the heartbeat of the choir school beating throughout the entire piece. And so it's just really an incredible a piece of music. Miss Pasco, can you give us what you were thinking, your thoughts about the work and kind of the kind of ride that we went on this kind of, I guess, past few months?
Well, I had the opposite experience of Bree. Bree got to work on the piece and then hear it as it moved through time. But I got to hear it first at the gala last year, and then I worked on the piece leading up to ACDA. And whenever I first heard it, I'm not really sure what I was hearing. I wasn't sure I could process what was happening because there's so much going on in the piece. And then when I had the opportunity to delve into it and start to work on it and see how everything was working, the intricacies and the rhythms and the chords, going from the faster section into the slower section, I really began to appreciate it. And there was a moment at ACDA in the set where we did this piece that and the pieces that also surrounded it, and we got to it and you could almost feel from all the other choir members that the text was alive. And I think that it just is such a great representation of your skill as a composer, because whenever you're able to make a text make people feel that as they're performing and as they're listening, it's life-changing, I think.
Agreed. And Kira, from a completely non-musical perspective, so Kira and I, we had a lot of conversations about we need something special for our 135th anniversary of the choir. We should do something. Why commission a work? And you want to talk about kind of what we were thinking, as kind of planning something like doing like this?
Well, I think, 135 years, the choir has been in different forms, but it's been consistently singing for 135 years. So we definitely wanted to do something that, kind of marked that occasion. And we did receive a grant to do that from the Presser Foundation. And we're very grateful for. And it's so and you'll have to remind me. The piece. It's based, as I understand, on a poem by Mr. O'Shaughnessy. What's the I don't know what the Arthur O'Shaughnessy. Yep. And I was just wondering, did I know that the name We Are the Music Makers sort of says it all for the choir, but I was wondering, Ariane, did you pick that piece, or did you pick the title, or Mr. Brent, did you pick it? How did it come into being? Because I don't remember that part. I just remember discussing, we need a special piece. We need to commission a piece that kind of talks about the choir in its entirety over the years. And I think when I saw that poem, it sort of does speak to that, the different roles of that. Music has played over in different settings and over the centuries, but can you shed some light on that?
Well, at the beginning, so I knew we wanted to choose something, and then you choose a composer. And so Tim, I really wanted to commission you to do work because I had just heard Peace Song, and I think I remember you shared out a recording of it, and I probably listened to it 1,000 times in about a 48-hour period. And I was like, he's got to do the piece. And then as far as the text goes, I chose the text and I said, this is the text that we want to set. And the reason why is because there is one phrase in there that talks about being movers and shakers. And it's interesting to me that when we use that, like, oh, so-and-so is a mover and a shaker, meaning like they're making things happen in this world, that it came from this poem. It's called Ode, actually. And that it really is referring to, we as music makers are not just artists, but we have these incredible dreams, and we're these guardians of dreams in the world, and that we are moving the world and society along. And that kind of resonated with me. But Tim and I didn't talk about exactly which parts of the text that would be set. And it's a super long poem with maybe 23, 27 verses.
Lots of verses.
So how did you, I actually don't know, how did you decide kind of what words to go there? Yeah.
Well, just like Ariane said, he approached me and said, this is the theme around which I'd like to build this program. And so here's the poem that I would like to use. Well, there are so many settings of that poem because it lends itself so well to, especially a choral setting. So what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to listen to other people's versions of the song because I didn't want anyone else's creative ideas to inform what I was going to do. So what I did is I made sure I didn't listen to that. And I just went to the poem and I started to just read. So, for me as a choral composer, as a singer, there has to be some kind of internal rhythm that makes sense in the lyric if I'm going to sing it. Not just the message of the lyric, but it needs to be able to, I need to feel it moving metrically. And as I was reading out loud, some of the lines to me don't work as well rhythmically as other lines, even though the message in that particular stanza might be very important or interesting, artistic, or poetic. So I read through that poem, I can't tell you how many times, and started to just eliminate stanzas that didn't work for me rhythmically, metrically. And then that left me with a certain number of stanzas. And I thought to myself, of these remaining, I can't set all of them, there are too many. So what really kind of gets to the nucleus of the message that I would like the piece to get across to the audience? And once I did that, I started to eliminate other stanzas, which left me with the stanzas that I ended up incorporating into the setting. Obviously, we are the music makers, we are the dreamer of dreams. I mean, that's like the pinnacle of that piece around. And, I wanted something to kind of balance that. So, when Ariane and I talked about this piece, just like I explained in the beginning of this interview, I asked him a lot of questions about what is it you want the piece to do? What stylistically, what are you looking for? And he described to me, he said, well, I'm in love with your composition Peace Song. Is there something that you could do that might have similar aesthetics to that song and incorporate We Are the Music Makers? And so with that in mind, I started thinking about, okay, what aesthetically in Peace Song, or what describes this piece? What makes it so vibrant? Or, obviously there's a rhythmic element there. The tempo is vibrant. There are certain things harmonically that I think in Peace Song, I used a little bit of in Music Makers. So I think Lex said something about like jazzy elements. There are some certainly jazzy elements harmonically speaking in We Are the Music Makers. And I try to borrow a little bit from gospel, more contemporary styles, but also being true to the kind of, maybe more traditional choral writing, more classical writing. So hopefully the listener, when they interact with the piece, they get to hear it, they might hear a lot of different elements that are woven together so they don't seem like I just tried to throw the kitchen sink in there. I was very strategic about how to use certain styles and certain harmonic language in the writing so that you do get a sense of like a newness. So it feels like it's not something that you've heard before, but yet if you're a chorister and you sang choral music for a long time, there are elements about the way that I wrote the piece that you would identify with.
That makes a lot of sense. And like the other thing that I think is interesting how a piece grows and evolves is we started, the original piece started at the We Are the Music Makers. And then I remember I was like, Tim, it's so great. I love it. We have to add an intro. And you're like, yeah, let's do it. And then that whole like beginning, I love the opening of Music Makers. It just sets up that kind of, I don't know. And so like the piece has like three like sections. Yeah. It's got like this kind of introduction, this kind of main idea, this contrast section, and then back to this main idea again. And I love it. And I love that, yes, we are working. Yes, they are working together in one is just, every time that we would sing that, it was great. And like it's like a double choir, semi-choir, and like a full choir. And we it's interesting even in how that evolves, because originally when we did it, we were like, okay, we're going to have some of the older high school kids be the semi-choir and then everybody else sing. And then we're like, oh, wait, we can change things and we can balance it out differently. So why don't we have a semi-choir that's of adults and choristers, and then have the rest of the choir. So I think it was like a really, 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 really wonderful way to kind of incorporate all of the different kind of gifts of singers in the choir and all of that. So it's amazing. I want to make sure that we get to play this piece. So we're going to play the piece so that folks can hear it. You'll hear an opening section. You'll hear the kind of main theme section, which is accompanied by djembe. And you'll also hear this like middle section as well, which is, you'll know it for sure when you get to it. It's just incredible. And you can find this piece, if folks are interested in purchasing this piece, they can find this on your website, correct, Tim?
They can, and it's also published through Music Spoke.
Awesome. So you can find it on Music Spoke. You can, and can you give us your website?
Yeah, it's just my name. It's Tim Brent, so it's TimBrent.com.
Awesome. So here we go. We're going to get ready, and we're going to listen to Music Makers. We are What a fun piece. So much fun. Thank you for writing such a beautiful, 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 beautiful piece. It was just amazing to work on it. And we went into the Gibson We Shall Overcome right after that. But, they worked just so beautifully. We did the Mataka, and it was just an incredible, incredible, incredible experience. So thank you for that. Now, I have a question for Bree here. Want to give you an opportunity to ask. I know that Bree is interested in music composition as well as education. Do you have any questions for Dr. Brent about preparing for what that might look like on a collegiate level?
Yes, I specifically wanted to ask because I'm thinking of going to school in the South in Georgia. And coming from Delaware, I wanted to ask if there has been a change in your creativity when it comes to composing music from being up in the north in New Jersey, I believe is that where, okay.
New Jersey,
Being
yeah.
from New Jersey and moving to Miami, Florida, has there been a change in how your environment has affected how you make your music at all?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know if it's a combination of the environment or what's happening in my life that's had an effect on my music making and creative process. Like I said at the beginning of our interview, having to be a caretaker for a young child has been my sole responsibility the last 9 months. So that certainly has, having a child, this is our first child. So having my very first experience being a father, I think that probably played the largest role in my music making more than my geographic location. So I don't know but it may have influenced it. I hope that helps answer your question.
Awesome. Now, Lex does a lot of singing of vocal jazz. Do you have any questions for Dr. Brent about kind of in the vocal jazz arena?
Okay, so I go to Cab Calloway School of the Arts, and Mr. Lastman used to teach jazz choir, but he
I
recently
think I might
retired.
have met you when I visited, did I not?
I think I did, yes. I think we met. But we he had a lot of sessions that explained like what makes a good scat section, how you should go about it, how much you should prepare before you do it, like the patterns you should follow. I was just wondering if you had any advice on like any tips on what makes a good scat, especially when there is a not particularly busy but more complicated background instrumental.
Sure. Well, what makes a good scat? I think what defines a good improvisational solo is how a couple of elements, but I think primarily how the improviser is able to take a simple motive or a simple idea and develop that idea throughout the form of the piece. So I think some of the more masterful solos that I've heard or good scat solos are solos that have that kind of cohesive quality, and you can hear the development of a single idea or very few ideas. I think if we flip that question on its side, what makes a bad solo? I think when a singer or instrumental improviser tries to put too much musical information in a given solo and you can't feel the thread of cohesion between the ideas, they just feel like a lot of different ideas trying to be crammed together. I think if you look at improvisation as spontaneous composition, you'd have to use some of the same analytical tools that you would to figure out what makes a good melody. And I think the elements that make a good melody are that kind of cohesive quality that you see a development. So what does that mean? It could be a use of sequence. So if I go da 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 boo de doo de boo doo doo de boo doo doo de, and I sequence that little thread of 3 notes, that feels good to our ears because there's a cohesiveness. I've used a limited number of notes, and now I'm just using melodic sequence. So your ear hears where the pattern wants to go. So sometimes there's a good way to lead your listener down the path is to give them something that maybe is predictable. So if I sequence do 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 do, and you think I'm going to go da 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 da, but if I go do 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 ba da ba do 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 do, and I change the direction, I give you something different. It sets you up for a a melodic expectation, and then I change the expectation. And I think as you get more sophisticated in your improvisation, a good improviser can lead you down a certain melodic path and then change direction quickly. And you, as a listener, go, oh, I can't believe they just did that. Because as the improviser, they knew they were leading you down, but they could just go, it's like the road more taken or less traveled or whatever. They're going to take you down the more traveled road for a second, but then they're going to change direction before you even realize what they're doing. And then you just go, oh my gosh, how did they do that? Well, lots of practice and having an idea of what they want to do in the solo. They may not know all the notes they want to sing, but they may have ideas about what kind of musical content they want to do, or if they want to do a sequence or something like that. I think having studied improvisation, and I continue to study, I don't think anybody can claim to be a master of improvisation. I think we're always a good improviser is always learning. So having done this for 25 years, 28 years or so, I'm farther ahead than I was 28 years ago, but I still feel like every time I improvise, it reveals what I don't know about music. And that's one of the things I think I love about improvisation, is that it truly, to me, is one of the highest art forms of music, is to put somebody on the spot to spontaneously create something that makes musical sense and rhythmic sense, harmonic sense. And in a jazz context, you're doing that live with other players. So it's not just you singing by yourself, but now you have to be listening to a harmonic instrument like a piano or guitar. And if they change the harmony on you, you have to have those oral skills developed at such a high level that you can hear that slight harmonic change and move your solo to shift with that one chord that they played that was different, or hear the drummer play some rhythmic figure that you weren't expecting, but you heard it and you pick up on that rhythm and you're able to incorporate that into your solo. So I think, jazz improvisation to me, again, is one of the highest musical art forms for me. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I have, for the gala we have coming up, the Gallery, as I believe we've been calling it. I had a little improv solo in one of the songs, and so it sort of spurred on the idea of like, well, what classifies good in that context? But I like your answer. It's a good way to look at it. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Great question.
And we're just about running out of time here. I'm wondering if you might be able to, Dr. Brent, if you had advice to give us or any of our students or anyone tuning in today about kind of being successful, not necessarily in music, just in life, what kind of thoughts might you have for us?
Well, I think, success is measured on so many different levels, right? But I think, those attributes or traits of successful people, I think in music and art, those are people that they're following their passion and they're living their dream, and so I think anybody who is driven by being a creative type person in the arts, whether it's performance art like what we do, visual arts, anything like that, I think that, you owe it to yourself to explore what the possibilities are. And I think that if art moves you and you feel like your life without art isn't your life and you feel unfulfilled, I think that you owe it to yourself to pursue that. And if you're going to do that, that means you're going to pursue it with every ounce of energy, commitment, passion, dedication that you can muster. Because if you don't give it that much, the chance of that blossoming into something that could potentially lead to a professional career in it diminish. So I think if you're going to do art seriously and you're going to try to do it as a profession, then you have to do it 110% every day, every hour.
And do you feel that way about the back end business part? Like, I know you have to do a lot of like back end business part of your work.
Yeah, I don't think anybody goes. I can't say anybody. I think few people go into making art because they're business minded. Some people do, but I think most people go into art for art's sake. So you learn along the way the business elements, like you discussed. Being a composer. Well, I don't write for free because I have to pay my bills and I have to feed my family. So I have to charge people money for my work. That's an unfortunate or fortunate part of being an artist. Like, you need to get paid for your art and your creativity. So then how do you negotiate that? How do you write a contract? How much do you charge for your services? All those kinds of things. So unfortunately, I'm getting a signal. I think that I
Yeah.
have to leave you in about 90 seconds. I believe you have a 90-second
Yep,
quiz.
we do. We've got our quarantine quiz that we're going to ask you. I've got a timer here already set up and ready to go. So this is my favorite little part of our interviews. So you can't see the timer too well, but there will be a big picture of a duck that'll reveal itself once we have gotten our last 90 seconds here. So Brittany, do you mind asking our questions for us?
Sure. Ready?
Yep, and here we go.
Bought more than 10 rolls of toilet paper at a time. Became that person at Costco. Pretended to be frozen or muted on Zoom. Have to beg someone to stay home. Attempted a virtual choir video and failed. Worn pajamas for more than 24 hours.
Sorry about that. I got kicked off for a second.
Well, we'll resume.
Okay.
Joined a virtual party. Lost track of the week. Morphed into a nocturnal being. Logged onto Zoom with business attire on the top and pajamas on the bottom. Spoken to a friend you haven't caught up with in a while. Binge watched a show in 48 hours or less. Shopped online for something you didn't need. Worked from your bed. Slept past noon. Did a puzzle. Baked bread. Made a TikTok. Taken a face mask selfie. Skipped a shower. Gave into Tiger King. Coughed and wondered. Used Zoom. Forgot to brush your teeth. Bought snacks and, oh, time's
all
up.
the time. Well, we want to thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Brent. It was a true pleasure to have you. We'll be back on Tuesday at noon with Stacy Gibbs, so that'll be a lot of fun. So we hope that you'll tune in with us. Again, thank you to all of our choristers and staff who are on the call with us today. And thanks, Tim, and say hi to Amanda and Alex for us, and have a great day.
I will.
Take
Thank you
care,
so
everyone.
much for having me. Nice to meet you guys.